Growing up as an only child in a modest household taught me the value of resourcefulness and ambition from a young age. My parents, though not wealthy, managed to provide me with a solid education. "Alina, make something of yourself," they often encouraged. And so, fueled by their support, I pursued a career in fashion design. College was a transformative experience. It was there that I met Samuel, another aspiring designer who matched my determination and creative flair. We bonded over endless nights spent sketching and sewing in the studio, sharing dreams of the fashion empires we admired and the revolutionary designs we hoped to create someday. "Alina, your imagination is boundless," Samuel would say during one of our late-night brainstorming sessions. "Ever thought about starting your brand?" His enthusiasm was contagious, and it spurred thoughts of creating something truly unique. After graduation, Samuel and I married in a simple ceremony attended by a handful of friends and family. Our vows were pledges of support for each other's dreams and aspirations, as much personal as they were professional. However, tragedy struck soon after when I lost both my parents to a sudden flu outbreak. The grief was overwhelming, but it brought with it an unexpected inheritance, a house and $800,000. It was a painful way to come into such means, yet it offered us a foundation to finally start the fashion line we'd always envisioned. "We shouldn't let this opportunity slip by," Samuel suggested one evening, surrounded by old fabric samples and design drafts. Motivated by our shared vision, we launched our clothing line from the inherited house. I took the lead on the creative front, designing and sewing our initial prototypes, while Samuel handled the business side. When our debut collection sold out quickly, our excitement was palpable. "It's happening, Samuel. People love what we're creating," I exclaimed. His proud response, "You're incredible, babe," filled me with warmth and reassurance. As our business flourished, so did our family. Balancing motherhood with our expanding company was daunting at first, but I soon discovered my strength and adaptability, managing sketches and fabric choices with a baby on my hip. "You're doing marvelously," Samuel would remark, admiring my ability to blend parental duties with professional demands. The arrival of our second child only deepened my resolve and our commitment to both our growing family and our business. Over 13 years, our routine settled into a steady rhythm of family and work life. I poured my heart into our company and our children, while Samuel's role increasingly took him abroad to secure fabric deals and expand our brand. His trips became more frequent and his absences longer, which sometimes left me with a sense of unease, though I attributed it to the normal stresses of balancing a growing business with family life. I focused on maintaining a joyful home, keeping our children happy, and our business thriving, even as the dynamics between Samuel and me began to shift subtly. Our conversations at dinner had dwindled to mere whispers, and gradually, Samuel and I found ourselves in separate beds. One stormy night, while Samuel was away on what was supposed to be a business trip, a call from my friend Georgia changed everything. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "Alina, I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I saw Samuel downtown today." I tried to dismiss it casually. "Oh, probably just another meeting," though my heart sank with doubt. "No, Alina. He wasn't alone. He was with a young woman, and they seemed close." Her words hit me hard, and although I wanted to deny it, suspicion crept into my thoughts. When Samuel returned, the air between us was charged with tension. Finally, one quiet evening, I gathered my courage and confronted him in our silent living room. "Samuel, are you seeing someone else?" He didn't seem shocked by my question. Instead, there was a weary acceptance in his eyes as he nodded. "Yes." The simplicity of his confession felt like a betrayal. "How long?" I demanded, a mixture of anger and hurt in my voice. "A few months," he confessed, avoiding my gaze. "It just happened. It just happened," I retorted, my sadness turning into fury. "Things like this don't just happen, Samuel. You made a choice." He offered no defense, only a tired resignation. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Thinking of our children and the life we had built, I knew the betrayal was too profound, the gap too wide to bridge. I want a divorce. To my surprise, he didn't object. If that's what you want, I won't fight you. And just like that, after 13 years, our marriage was ending. Not with a battle, but with a quiet surrender. We divided everything evenly. I kept the house and we shared custody of the kids. The entire process was handled with unsettling efficiency, as if dissolving just another business transaction. Life after the divorce was a mix of highs and lows. The house felt emptier, and the children, sensing the shift, clung to me more. I immersed myself in work and parenting, dedicating every moment to keeping our lives stable. At a community event on Saturday, a friend introduced me to Luke, a widower with a warm smile and a gentle demeanor. Alina, meet Luke. He runs a legal practice, she said, bridging the gap between us. Luke extended a friendly hand. Nice to meet you, Alina. I've heard a lot about your designs. I laughed it off. Thanks, but it's just a lot of late nights fueled by caffeine. We connected instantly, discussing everything from parenting challenges to our careers. Luke, a lawyer, was practical and grounded, a refreshing contrast to my creative whirlwind of a life. It must be tough running a business and managing 2 kids on your own, he empathized. It's like a circus, but we manage, I replied. And you? How's solo parenting treating you? He sighed, a touch of melancholy in his tone.
It's not easy.
Lily misses her mom a lot, but we take it one day at a time. Our friendship deepened from there. We met for coffee while the kids played, and it was comforting to have someone who understood the trials of single parenting. Luke's steady presence became a reassuring constant in my life. A few months later, while the kids were absorbed in a movie, Luke and I sat on the porch, enjoying the cool evening air. Alina, I've been thinking, Luke started, hesitating a bit. Would you be interested in going out sometime, just the 2 of us? His question caught me off guard. It had been quite a while since I'd even thought about dating. Are you sure that's a good idea? We both have our kids to think about, I replied, a bit wary of complicating things. He smiled reassuringly. That's exactly why it makes sense. We understand each other's lives, the whole package. Dating Luke felt like a refreshing new start. He was thoughtful and straightforward, traits I had grown to appreciate deeply. The kids loved him too, and Lily, with her bubbly personality and infectious laughter, quickly won a special place in my heart. One evening, while we all enjoyed dinner together, Luke gave me a serious look and said, Alina, I know it might seem soon, but everything about this feels right. How would you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement? Looking around at our blended family, with laughter echoing around us, I felt a profound sense of happiness. Luke, that sounds wonderful. We had a small wedding, just us, the kids, and a few close friends. It was more than a new chapter. It was a fresh beginning, a new story filled with hope for happiness that I hadn't let myself fully imagine before. But then, one afternoon, the calm was shattered by a call from Samuel, whose name flashing on my phone filled me with dread. Alina, I'm filing a lawsuit against you, Samuel declared, his voice filled with hostility. You took more than your fair share in the divorce. Thanks to my new father-in-law, I have top lawyers now. We're going to make sure I get what I deserve. And I'm not stopping there. I'll take everything from you. His words were like a punch to the gut. You can't be serious, Samuel. We settled everything fairly, I protested. Fair? Do you think you left me any choice? You're going to pay for what you did. You were never a good wife, and now you'll see what happens when you cross me, he sneered, ending the call with a smug laugh. I was left shaking and in tears when Luke found me. Babe, what's wrong? He asked, his voice full of concern as he knelt beside me. It's Samuel, he's suing me. He says he wants everything, claiming I cheated him in the divorce, I managed to say through my tears. Luke's expression hardened. He won't get away with this, Alina. I'll take this to court myself. We'll fight him, and we'll win. He has no basis for any of this. His assurance was comforting, but it was clear that a storm was brewing. Weeks later, the situation escalated when I encountered Samuel and his new wife, Diana, at the school parking lot. Diana gave me a malicious smirk. Looking pretty rough, Alina. Bet Luke's going to bail soon too, huh? Samuel added loudly, enough for others to hear. Yeah, Alina. Look at you and these kids. Maybe I should take them too since you can't handle anything right. The murmurs from other parents were humiliating. You need to shut your mouth, Samuel. Not in front of the kids, I hissed, my anger boiling over. He just laughed coldly. Can't handle the truth? See you in court, Alina. They walked away, leaving me there, seething and humiliated, but determined to stand strong. The passion within me had been ignited. This was no longer merely about safeguarding my assets. It was about preserving my self-respect and securing my children's futures. We need to delve deeper, Luke. There's more beneath the surface of this lawsuit, I declared upon arriving home. Luke was quick to concur. Let's hire a private investigator, someone who can discreetly unearth whatever Samuel is concealing. The following day, we engaged a highly recommended PI known for his tact and thoroughness. After briefing him on the entire scenario, Samuel's unexpected lawsuit, his threats, and his new lifestyle, I made my expectations clear. Mr. Hudson, I need to understand who he's associating with, what maneuvers he's making in his business. Everything, I instructed. The PI, jotting down notes, assured me he would begin immediately. You'll have all the details soon. The ensuing weeks were a blur of anxiety and anticipation, waiting for any update from the investigator. When my phone finally rang with news, my heart thumped so vigorously that I struggled to speak. Mrs. Lukes, I've discovered some alarming information about your ex-husband. Mr. Hudson began without any preamble. Tell me everything, I responded, bracing myself for the worst. Well, it appears Samuel has been engaging in several dubious activities. Most shockingly, he's involved in a relationship with an underage girl. I have conclusive evidence of this, he reported. Shock and disgust overwhelmed me. That's appalling. Can we use this in court? There's more, Mr. Hudson continued. He has been covertly undermining your business, enticing your clients and key staff with better offers to switch to his side. The betrayal was profound, feeling like a sharp stab. He's attempting to obliterate me and my company, I uttered, fury now overtaking my initial shock. Yes, and there's proof of him trying to sully your reputation too. He bought a batch of subpar products and released them under your brand name to damage your image, Mr. Hudson added. After the call, I swiftly shared the details of Samuel's affair with his current wife, Diana, who had scorned me previously. Although it was a small act of retribution, she needed to witness the true character of the man she was defending. Within hours, Diana called me, crying uncontrollably. Alina, I'm so sorry. I've seen the emails. How could he? I was terrible to you, and all the while, Samuel was. Diana, calm down, I interrupted, my anger softening somewhat at her distress. What's done is done. I believe you weren't aware. She sniffled. I want to help you, Alina. I want to get back at him. Cautiously, I agreed to meet her at a local cafe. When we sat down, Diana pushed a folder across the table. These are documents and emails from Samuel. He's been diverting clients from your company to his. He's planning to ruin you completely. Flipping through the documents, the full extent of Samuel's treachery was starkly evident. He had laid a trap to discredit me and seize my business for a fraction of its worth. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Diana, thank you for bringing this to me. Let's not let Samuel know we're aware. We need a strategy. She nodded, wiping away a tear. Anything you need, Alina. I'm with you. As the court hearing approached, the alliance between Diana and me grew unexpectedly strong. We met often, strategizing over coffee at the very cafe where our plot against Samuel had begun. Diana was remarkably candid, contrasting sharply with her previous demeanor. Alina, I brought more emails today. Look at these, she said one afternoon, sliding a stack of papers across the table. As I perused the documents in front of me, each page revealed more of his calculated moves against my business. This is crucial, Diana. With this evidence, we can demonstrate to the court the extent of his actions, I remarked. Diana nodded, her expression resolute. I can't believe I didn't see this sooner. I'm fully committed now. Let's take him down. Our meetings evolved beyond exchanging information. They became sessions where we fortified our bond through our shared sense of betrayal. One day, as we were concluding, Diana sighed deeply. I once thought he left you because you lacked something. Now I realize it's he who's inadequate, not you. Understanding the full scope of Samuel's treachery, that he aimed to tarnish not just my personal life, but also my professional world, I knew immediate, bold action was needed to protect the trust built with our clients and suppliers over the years. I called an urgent gathering of all key stakeholders, explaining that the integrity of our brand was compromised by Samuel's deceptive strategies. Seated at the head of the conference table, surrounded by familiar faces, some I had known for decades, I addressed the group. Thank you for assembling on such short notice, I started, my voice firm despite the inner chaos. You might have heard troubling rumors about our company. Today, I want to clarify the facts. I detailed how Samuel had been covertly undermining our operations by introducing low-quality products and attempting to lure away our clients by presenting better offers. He had even gone to the extent of distributing counterfeit products under our brand to degrade our reputation. As I revealed these details, murmurs of shock and disbelief spread through the room. I am here to affirm our dedication to quality and transparency, I continued. We are taking immediate steps to rectify these issues, including verifying the authenticity of any product sold under our brand and offering compensation for any substandard goods distributed. The attendees nodded, some visibly relieved by our proactive measures. After the meeting, many approached me, expressing their support and appreciation. We've always valued your leadership and your products, Alina, one longtime supplier commented. We're with you, not just in good times, but also when challenges arise. Fueled by this support, I decided to take our message public. We prepared a social media post to alert our customers about potential fakes and outline steps for verifying the authenticity of their purchases. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing their continued trust and appreciation for our honesty. As I read through the comments, a sense of pride washed over me. We were more than a brand. We were a community, and this challenge had only strengthened our bonds. When Samuel unexpectedly called, proposing a settlement meeting, I was intrigued. He suggested we meet at a downtown restaurant, a neutral venue. Luke, my steadfast supporter, accompanied me. Arriving at the restaurant, we found Samuel and Diana already there. The atmosphere was tense, a stark contrast to the ambient noise of other diners. Samuel wasted no time. I've decided to be generous and forgive you, Alina, he began, his tone condescending enough to make my skin crawl. All I ask in return is for your best clients and a small compensation of $4 million. His demands were so ludicrous that I couldn't help but laugh. You must be joking, I said, looking him straight in the eye. My initial amusement quickly turned to resolve. Not only will I not comply, but I am also taking you to court, Samuel, for libel and copyright infringement. We possessed all the proof necessary to substantiate our case. Samuel's confident grin momentarily wavered, but he quickly regained his poise. Oh, please, you think you can intimidate me? Diana's father has secured the best legal team money can buy, he boasted. As he issued his threat, Diana, who had been quiet up to that point, suddenly stood up. Her chair screeched loudly across the floor, drawing curious looks from other diners. Actually, Samuel, she began, her tone steady and unexpectedly calm, I won't be financing your legal battles any longer. I'm aware of the affair and the underage girl. I'm filing for divorce. She reached into her bag, pulled out a stack of papers, and slammed them on the table before him. These are the divorce papers. My father is appalled by your behavior, and his lawyers are prepared to support me, not you, in exposing your wrongdoing. Samuel's complexion turned ashen, his eyes flickering between the divorce papers and Diana, struggling to determine which was more devastating. He opened his mouth to plead, but Diana turned to me instead. Alina, I'm truly sorry for everything. I was blind, but now I see exactly who he is, she said, her gaze filled with sorrow yet determination. I understand why you left him. I'm leaving him too. With that, she walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence. Samuel's previous confidence dissolved into desperation. He fell to his knees, pleading, Please, Don't let this ruin me. Think of my career, my life. We left him there, kneeling on the floor of the restaurant, and I walked out feeling a mix of relief and triumph. Samuel's schemes to undermine me had not only failed, but had spectacularly backfired. The court later found him guilty of unfair business practices and ordered him to pay compensation. His reputation was ruined, and his unethical dealings had left his company not just unstable, but ultimately bankrupt. In an ironic twist of fate, I was offered the opportunity to buy out his company, a strategic move that expanded my business and solidified my position in the industry. It felt like reclaiming a part of my past that Samuel had tried to tarnish. One morning, as I reviewed new designs for the upcoming season in my office, Luke popped his head in, wearing a grin. "Hey, got a minute?" I looked up, smiling back. "For you always. What's up?" He leaned against my desk, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Now that all this mess with Samuel is over, why don't we do something fun? Just you, me, and the kids. A week of sun, sand, and no business talk, just family time." As we began planning our getaway, the phone rang. I answered, expecting another business call, but was surprised to hear Diana on the other end. "Alina, hi. I just wanted to check in with you," she began, her voice tentative. "Diana, hi. It's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" I asked, my tone filled with genuine concern. "I'm doing okay, considering. The divorce is moving forward, and it's messy but freeing in a way," she replied, a small laugh escaping her. "I'm glad to hear you're finding some peace in all this," I said. "And thank you again for everything. We couldn't have resolved this without your help." After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, reflecting on the dramatic changes. From adversaries to allies, the journey with Diana had been unexpected but profoundly impactful. Later that day, I gathered my team at the office to announce the return of stability to our operations and to celebrate the loyalty and hard work everyone had demonstrated through the challenging times. "As you all know, it's been a rough 8 months," I began, surveying the group of faces, some weary but all relieved, around the room. "Despite all the challenges, our journey has only made us stronger, and it's primarily due to your unwavering commitment and toughness." The meeting concluded with a spontaneous celebration as cakes and beverages emerged, allowing everyone to unwind and enjoy a shared sigh of relief. Later that evening, back at home with Luke and the kids, I experienced a sense of happiness that had been elusive for quite some time. We gathered around the dinner table, filled with laughter and chatter about our upcoming beach vacation. This chapter in our lives concluded not with any regrets, but with a renewed appreciation for the relationships that had been tested yet ultimately fortified. Now we look forward to creating new memories, discovering fresh joys, and embracing a restored sense of tranquility.
My husband's $80 million estate, along with this house, will be inherited by me. We don't have any children, so everything is mine, my sister-in-law arrogantly declared. My name is Riley, a 45-year-old part-time worker. My husband and I have 2 sons, a senior and a sophomore in high school. My eldest son is taking the college entrance exam this year. He aspires to be a lawyer and has been studying diligently. He has wanted to be a lawyer since he was a small child, possibly influenced by my older brother, Malcolm. My brother is a lawyer, and a few years ago, he established a law firm and even hired a few other lawyers. My eldest son, who grew up watching my brother, loves to study and has always gotten good grades, even in elementary school. When my brother heard that my son wanted to be a lawyer, he was overjoyed and encouraged him. My son would often tell my brother, "I will be a lawyer like you, uncle." He would chuckle and reply, "Hurry up and become a lawyer, then follow in my footsteps." My brother, who was married but had no children, often visited us. He gladly played with my sons and spoiled them. My brother's wife was much younger than him. She wasn't eccentric, but rather a difficult woman who never visited our house, so we never really spoke to her. My brother and I lost our parents when we were young, so when I was about to get married, my brother took the place of a parent. After I got married, he married as well. My husband and I were relieved when we knew my brother was planning to marry a young woman. But when we actually met his fiancée, I was surprised at how grumpy she looked. We were expecting happy faces, because she was about to marry my brother, but she looked at us with a sulky expression. I said, "You two are great together," in front of my brother and his fiancée. But I told my true feelings, when I was alone with my husband. I was curious as to why she appeared so unhappy after the marriage was finalized. My husband seemed to agree with me and responded, concerned, "She wasn't a particularly pleasant bride. But what can we do?" My brother married his 10-year younger fiancée shortly afterward. Before they got married, my brother bought a house, so my husband and I took our children and visited them to celebrate. The house was magnificent and astonished me, as expected of my brother, who owns a law firm. However, we did not see my sister-in-law, so my husband jokingly said to my brother, "Has your wife already left you?" My husband was obviously joking, but seeing my brother's stern expression made us nervous. My brother explained, "Whenever there's something going on, my wife returns to her parents' house. Today is her mother's birthday, so she's staying over to celebrate." My husband's shoulders slumped, realizing he had made a bad joke. Suddenly my brother asked us with a straight face, "If I ever can't have children, can I adopt one of yours?" I thought my brother was joking, but he looked serious. I couldn't answer his unexpected question, but my husband laughed and replied, "We don't know what the future holds, so let's discuss it when it happens, okay? If you're okay with our children, you're free to adopt whichever you want," he concluded. My husband didn't seem to take it seriously and dismissed it, but I was concerned about the adoption, and, more importantly, about my brother and his wife not getting along. It wasn't my place to intervene because it was their problem, but I was concerned. After that, whenever we visited my brother's house or he came over to ours, it was always just him. My sister-in-law never showed up, and my brother never mentioned her, so I avoided asking about her. They had been married for more than 10 years, and I had almost forgotten about her existence. This year, my eldest son was accepted into his dream law school. My brother brought up adoption again when he came to our house to celebrate my son. Like I said before, "Would you allow me to adopt either of your kids?" he asked. My brother and his wife were unable to have children, so he asked the question once more. They had just gotten married the last time we discussed it, so there was no sense of hurry. But this time, my brother seemed serious. Nonetheless, my husband appeared to take it lightly and responded quickly. "Would you prefer to have our eldest son since he aspires to be a lawyer?" My husband said it so simply, but I was cautious because it is a major life-changing decision for our sons. Though they would be with my brother, their uncle, I was worried about my sister-in-law. I was concerned that she might mistreat my son, who was not her biological child. So I asked my brother, "Is your wife in favor of adopting?" My brother replied with a sour smile, "Don't worry about her, we've already discussed it." I was relieved to hear that, but I couldn't make up my mind right away. So I decided to discuss it with my two sons and then make a decision. They are already in high school, so I wanted them to make their own decisions. We didn't go any further that day, but a few days later, I got a call from my brother's law firm. They said he had collapsed. I rushed to the hospital and found the staff from the law firm waiting with worried expressions. My brother had a stroke at work and was unconscious. After I arrived, the law firm staff left, mentioning that they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I called her landline, but there was no answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. My husband and our second son later arrived, but we still couldn't reach her. My second son eventually discovered a smartphone among my brother's belongings. We unlocked it and found her number. She answered angrily when I called using that phone. "I told you not to call again. I will sue you." I began to speak while she was yelling in a terrible tone. "It's Riley, Malcolm's sister. My brother collapsed and was taken to the hospital." Her tone changed immediately. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was Malcolm. You said he collapsed?" she asked gently. I told her about my brother's condition and which hospital he was taken to, but she responded happily, "I can't go to the hospital right now because I have things to do, but please notify me as soon as you hear anything." She then hung up the phone. I wondered if she really had more important things to do when her husband was sick. Now that we knew my sister-in-law wouldn't be any help, we decided to take care of my brother. Since my eldest son had finished his university entrance exams and was relaxing at home, he visited my brother every day on my behalf. My brother never regained consciousness and remained in critical condition, but my sister-in-law never called or visited the hospital. About a week after my brother was hospitalized, I called my sister-in-law again. She answered the phone quickly and gleefully asked, "What's the matter? Did he die?" I wanted to yell at her for being so rude, but I responded quietly, "He is still alive. Why don't you visit the hospital?" She retorted, clearly irritated, "I'm not a doctor nor a spiritual healer. There's nothing I can do for his recovery." I became even more enraged by her demeanor and hung up the phone. I began to suspect that my brother wanted to adopt one of my sons because he had given up on having children with his wife. I think they weren't getting along. When my brother's marriage was finalized, I asked him how they met, and he said they met through a marriage counseling agency. Maybe my sister-in-law married him because he was a lawyer, and she wanted a good life. This thought enraged me even more, but when I mentioned it to my husband, he said something even more cruel. If Malcolm dies in this situation, his wife will inherit the entire estate, since they don't have any children. So my brother came to celebrate my eldest son the other day and spoke to us about adoption. Maybe it was because he was thinking about his inheritance. I wish I could have decided at that time, but there was nothing I could do. After my brother left that day, I casually mentioned it to my two sons. My second son surprised me by saying, "I would be happy to be adopted," unlike my oldest son who has clear goals. My second son seems to believe that if he's adopted by Malcolm, he will have an easy life. I expected my first son, who looks up to his brother, to want to be adopted as well. However, he surprised me by saying, "I don't want to be adopted because, as the eldest son, I will take care of you, Mom and Dad." I was overjoyed, but I also knew that my eldest son, who aspired to be a lawyer, was the right one to be adopted by Malcolm. I was disappointed that I couldn't complete the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother. I do not want my brother's inheritance, but I also don't want to give even a penny of his property to my sister-in-law, I thought. She seemed to be eagerly awaiting his death. I could only hope for my brother's recovery, but he never did. My brother passed away a few days later, and I had no choice but to contact my sister-in-law. "My brother recently passed away," I said when I called her, and added, "Can we arrange the funeral?" She responded cheerfully, "Everything is up to you. Please do not appoint me as a pallbearer. I don't want to deal with any formalities." Before I could respond, she quickly hung up the phone. My husband and I planned the funeral with the help of the law firm staff. My husband was also concerned about the firm's future, but my brother had taken care of that. Although my brother was the firm's representative lawyer, he had delegated management to someone he trusted, so the law firm, as a corporation, would continue to operate without a problem. Many people came to my brother's funeral, and so many wreaths were brought that they couldn't all fit in the hall. I realized once again how wonderful my brother had been. My son also assisted at the funeral, but when my second son saw the presidents of major corporations, politicians, and others attending, he was frustrated. "I knew I should have been adopted," he muttered. "I had no idea how amazing he was," my son added. My husband and I both felt we could understand his sorrow. I was the pallbearer, but no one asked why my sister-in-law wasn't there, and no one mentioned it. I wondered if we were the only ones who knew my brother had married. My brother and his wife hadn't had a wedding. They had only gone on their honeymoon, so even the relatives may have missed it. If this was going to happen, I thought, I almost wish they had never married. No need for a wife who does not attend her husband's funeral. I regret not allowing my brother to adopt my second son sooner because I believe she would take all of my brother's estate. With the help of the law firm staff, my brother's funeral was completed. I invited everyone to my brother's house for a meal, and to thank them. "My brother will be able to rest in peace because of all of you," I said. We were all very sad. That's when my sister-in-law appeared, wearing a flashy pink coat. "After all this time, why did you come here?" I addressed her. With a big smile on her face, she spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "My husband's estate of $80 million, as well as this house, will be passed down to me, his wife. We don't have any children, so everything is mine." For some reason, when she said this triumphantly, My brother's subordinates burst out laughing. We looked at them, confused, unsure why they were laughing. My sister-in-law glared and yelled at them. "What exactly are you laughing about? You're so impolite." One of the lawyers smirked and responded, "We know that you're officially divorced. We all knew the result of your divorce settlement the day before he collapsed." "What? You were divorced?" I exclaimed, looking over at my sister-in-law's face. She stared at them, who had just revealed the truth, with the most terrifying expression ever. When she clenched her teeth, another lawyer started talking. "I also heard that you were charged alimony in conjunction with your divorce. Because your affair caused the divorce, it is inevitable," my sister-in-law yelled, glaring at the lawyer who said it. "I'm not required to pay alimony, am I? I no longer have anyone to pay." She tried to object. She spoke mockingly, but there was no way she could compete with a legal expert. The lawyer quickly retorted, "The right to alimony will also be inherited, so you will have to pay it to Riley. She's the inheritor." Then I realized for the first time that I was my brother's sole inheritor. If their divorce was finalized, and our parents are gone, then I'm all that's left. My sister-in-law seemed to realize this too, and looked at me with a horrified expression, causing me to step back. But she seemed unconvinced, and began yelling once more, "Don't I get half of the estate now that the divorce is settled?" A dismayed-looking lawyer responded, "Didn't Malcolm give you money when the divorce was finalized? I have a receipt certificate. He also purchased a house before the marriage, so it is not subject to property division," he concluded. I enjoyed watching her being lectured by the lawyers. Regardless of what she said, she seemed to recall something, and chuckled while laughing a little. "There's life insurance. I should still be the beneficiary," she said confidently. I was impressed by her attitude in a situation where everyone around appeared to be her enemy. She claimed she had made herself the beneficiary of Malcolm's life insurance. However, the lawyer was also quick to deny this. "Malcolm is a firm man," the lawyer said, "so I think he changed it when the divorce was finalized." I searched my brother's valuables and discovered the life insurance policy, but my sister-in-law saw this. She took the life insurance policy from me and looked impatiently at the beneficiary, but dropped her shoulders in disappointment when she returned the certificate to me. I noticed that the beneficiary was me. Realizing she was getting nowhere, my sister-in-law yelled out her true feelings without thinking. "I married a lawyer because I thought he was wealthy, but I've only got a little money. In addition, I have to pay alimony. This is a huge mistake," she resented. With a grim expression, the lawyer replied, "Malcolm said the same thing. He said he shouldn't have come for the advice of a marriage counselor. He bemoaned the fact that he had made a huge mistake." My brother had never said anything like that to me, but he had always been truthful with his coworkers and subordinates. Unable to refute anything, my sister-in-law rolled her eyes and left my brother's house. Later on, she will have to pay the alimony in installments, but she didn't have a job. She began looking for a job quickly, but she had never worked seriously before and quit immediately. She re-registered with a marriage counseling agency and looked for a wealthy man in order to make quick money. She found one, told him she needed money for marriage, and cheated him out of his money. But the man caught on right away and reported her to the police. She was arrested for marriage fraud. According to the lawyer who works at my brother's law firm, no alimony was ever paid to me. When I went to see the lawyer about it, this story came up, and the dismayed lawyer told me, "Now that she has been apprehended, alimony payments may be impossible to obtain for the foreseeable future. Alimony is not something I am interested in. I was more interested in seeing her suffer a terrible fate. I believe my brother would agree. So I would like the police to investigate thoroughly, uncover her other crimes, and charge her as a felon in court." My family moved into the house that my brother had left behind after unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were ecstatic to be able to live in a big house after previously living in an apartment. My eldest son is studying law harder than ever before. He observed his uncle's colleagues and subordinates, watching the lawyers argue with my sister-in-law, which strengthened his determination to become a lawyer. Though he was never adopted by Malcolm, I hope he will carry on my brother's legacy and become a great lawyer like him. Only my second son is upset and disappointed that I inherited my brother's entire estate. To be honest, he uttered dreamily, I wish I was adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything. He smiled half-jokingly, but there was a hint of sincerity in his words. Sandra, my mother said she wants to talk to you about the inheritance, so call her, my husband told me a few days after my father passed away. What? Why? I asked, shocked. My father had just passed away a few days earlier, and I was still grieving. My husband seemed indifferent to it all. Why is your mother talking about my father's inheritance? I asked again. I don't know, he replied and added, just call her tomorrow. His detachment stung. When did he become like this? My name is Sandra. I'm a 48-year-old company employee. I quit my job for a while but started working again after raising our son, Robert. My husband, Aaron, is the same age as me, and we work at the same company. We got married when we were 22 years old and had Robert the following year. We've spent half our lives together. We used to be comfortable around each other, but lately I've been noticing more and more of his unpleasant side. I was focused on raising our son, but when Robert was 3 years old, my husband suddenly announced, I'm quitting my job. Why? I asked, alarmed. I don't like my boss, Aaron said. I should be making more money. My colleagues are leaving for better jobs. I should too, he stated. My husband is easily influenced by others, and this bad habit of his was showing again. The result of his job change wasn't great. He got a slight raise, but he didn't fit in with his new colleagues and found the work boring. He used to be more lively when we worked together, but at some point, he became dull. Now, my husband's only pleasure seems to be going back to his parents' house. His parents' house is about a 30-minute drive away, so we go there often on weekends. At first, I went with him, but since it was too frequent, I stayed home with Robert more often. Many of my husband's old classmates live near his parents, and I think he relies on them because he doesn't have any close friends at work. I suggested, we should go out as a family, or play with Robert, instead of just going to your parents' house all the time. But Aaron refused. Robert doesn't like me, he said. As a result, we hardly ever went out as a family. Instead, we often went out with my parents and Robert. My father bought real estate during the bubble economy and had passive income from it. He also worked as an ordinary company employee, so I think we were relatively well off. My parents always came to pick us up in their car when we went out. I assumed my in-laws didn't want to see Robert because they hadn't invited him or mentioned anything about it, but it looks like they prefer their son over their grandson. That kind of life continued until Robert started junior high school. It became less frequent after that, but when I told my father about it, he seemed sad. My father bought a high-rise condominium that was being built near where we lived. When I asked him why, he said, you can see fireworks from the room. He seemed excited. He remembered how impressed Robert was when they went to see fireworks before, and thought that if they could see fireworks from the condominium, Robert would be happy too. When my parents started living in the high-rise condominium, Robert was already in high school, but when I told him about my father's idea, he immediately visited his grandparents to see the fireworks. Since then, they've gathered there on the day of the fireworks festival every year. My mother was originally weak in health and died after a while. It was sad, even though I had prepared for it. However, on the day of the fireworks festival every year, we visited my father's place with Robert without fail. When Robert turned 20 years old and drank alcohol with my father for the first time on the day of the fireworks festival, my father was really happy. My husband only went once at first. The next time he met my father was at my mother's funeral. My husband is still easily swayed, and when the topic of cleaning the house comes up around him, he suddenly starts cleaning. When someone mentions visiting a popular spot with their child, he suddenly wants to go with us, even though he rarely does. I don't think he's a bad person at heart, and I've accepted it because we can live relatively comfortably. But things have changed. My father collapsed and passed away at work. His colleagues called an ambulance, but he passed away at the hospital. He had an acute myocardial infarction, and if he had collapsed at home, he might have been left there for days. Maybe it was better that he collapsed in a public place. My husband and Robert also came to see him, but they didn't make it in time. We finished the funeral somehow while grieving. Then an unexpected person spoke to me. Sandra, are you okay? It was my mother-in-law. I didn't have much contact with her, but I thought my in-laws were worried about me. That high-rise condominium is still worth a lot because it's in a redevelopment area. You can get a considerable amount of money if you sell it now, she observed. I was stunned by her unexpected words, and she continued, Only Sandra will inherit the estate. It's good that you don't have to worry about money for the time being. I didn't have the slightest idea about inheritance yet. These people were worried about inheritance and approached me. I tried to suppress my anger as much as possible and told my in-laws, I'll think about it slowly. Then I asked them to leave. Later, my husband asked, Can that high-rise condominium really be sold for such a high price? The redevelopment plan had been discussed for some time, and my father had said that a large commercial facility would be built there along with other condominiums. But when I heard my husband ask such a question now, I was annoyed. A few days after my father's funeral, Aaron said again, My mother said she wants to talk to you about inheritance. What? Why is your mother talking about my father's inheritance? I asked, perplexed. I was a little annoyed that this was all the information he provided. I don't know, he said. Anyway, call her tomorrow. My anger rose again, this time against my husband. The next day, I couldn't bring myself to call my mother-in-law, but she called me instead. You're going to sell the high-rise condominium, right? Should I ask my acquaintance about a real estate agent? She suggested. I never said anything about selling it, I responded, taken aback. It's better to do this kind of thing quickly. Let me know any time because I'll help you, she said before hanging up. When Aaron came home, I told him about the conversation. What do you want? Do you plan to live there? He asked. The distance from the station is a disadvantage, I said. Maybe selling it is reasonable, I was thinking out loud. After that, my mother-in-law kept asking if we had sold it yet, or tried to push real estate agents on me, so I finally told her clearly, I also have friends who are real estate agents. Don't worry about me, this is my problem. What are you talking about? We're family, ask us anything, she said, and started calling me frequently, even though she hadn't called me before. Anyway, I thought that if we put it up for sale, maybe my mother-in-law would stop pressuring us. So I decided to consult with a friend, who is a real estate agent, and proceed with the sale. When my mother-in-law called and Aaron came home from work after that, I told them we were going to sell it, and the calls from my mother-in-law stopped for now, so I was relieved. 3 months later, I was contacted that a buyer had been found. It was said that it would be worth quite a bit, but it was beyond my imagination. Then, when Aaron returned home from work, he suddenly asked, So how much did it sell for in the end? Hiding my confusion as to why my husband knew, I lied, I still don't know. It's not selling at all. He started watching TV with a huh sound. I couldn't tell if he was interested or not. The next day, it was Saturday, and I was relaxing when the intercom rang. When I went out to see who it was, I found my parents-in-law at the door. Aaron, your father and mother are here, I called out to him, confused about what was happening. He invited his parents in, and then my mother-in-law handed me a piece of paper. When I looked down at it with suspicion, I realized it was divorce papers. Huh? I was confused. My mother-in-law, with a sharp tone, said, Sandra, how long are you going to live off Aaron? My son has been coming home a lot because he's feeling overwhelmed living with you. There were too many things to point out, and I didn't know what to say. So, for the time being, I turned to my husband and asked, What do you mean? Do you feel this way too? He nodded, confirming my worst fears. I didn't understand the meaning of this conversation that had never come up before. My husband continued, If we get divorced and split the money, we can live for a while, can't we? My parents-in-law nodded in agreement. My mind raced, trying to keep up. A friend of mine, who is a real estate agent, had mentioned that the high-rise condominium we sold brought in a considerable amount of money. My husband seemed to be considering this seriously. I stared at them, stunned. What is this? These people are unbelievable. While I was still processing, my husband began filling out the divorce papers. I couldn't believe it. He actually intended to go through with this. Do my parents-in-law want my husband to come back to their house, or do they just hate me? I wondered silently. They must have whispered something to my husband and swayed him into thinking this was a good idea. My husband must have thought it made sense, but it only made me sad. He probably assumed that he could secure the inheritance himself if he got divorced. However, inherited property isn't subject to property division. Knowing this, I snatched the divorce papers from his hands and filled them out on the spot. "I'll take care of it," I said, handing them back to him. My husband shrugged, saying, "It's too much trouble, so just do it. I'm leaving here so you can live here." He left with his parents, pulling his suitcase behind him. "I'll come back later for my large luggage," he added as he walked out the door. I realized then that he must have planned this with my in-laws and waited for the right moment to leave, carefully preparing to abandon our home. There was nothing more to say to my husband, so I called my son Robert and told him about the situation. What's that all about?" Robert was angrier than I was, but after thinking for a moment, he uttered, "Just wait a little bit before submitting the divorce papers." When I asked him why, he didn't answer directly, but I could tell he was thinking about something important. So I decided to wait for Robert's call. A week later, Robert arrived at my house. "They were planning this all along," he said, laying several photos on the table. The pictures were of my parents-in-law's house, but it wasn't the old-fashioned one I remembered. It was newly rebuilt. "A friend of mine lives near their house and took these photos," Robert explained. "My parents-in-law have been boasting around the neighborhood about recently rebuilding it." Robert's friend, playing detective, had taken these photos, and he had more to show. Robert threw another photo on the table. In it, my husband was with a woman I didn't recognize. "My friend caught them together," Robert said, his voice tight with anger. The next photo showed my husband and the woman entering a hotel with their arms around each other. There were also photos of the two of them entering my parents-in-law's house together. I was stunned. Was my husband cheating? Has he been visiting my parents' house so often just to see this woman? I thought. And if they entered the house together, it meant my parents-in-law approved of the relationship. Robert provided more information. "Dad's going to get married soon. That's why they rebuilt the house," he said. I was amazed at how much evidence Robert's friend had gathered. With all this, I can claim compensation and get divorced, I decided. Of course, I wouldn't give him the money from selling the high-rise condominium. I resolved to start looking for a lawyer. The following weekend, my husband called. "Hey, what do you mean you haven't submitted the divorce papers yet?" he asked, his tone unusually irritable. "Oh, I'm busy and can't easily get to City Hall," I replied, deliberately calm. "Why? Are you in a rush to remarry someone?" I decided to tease him. This made him even angrier. "What are you talking about? If you don't submit those papers quickly, I'll get a lawyer to divorce you forcibly," he hissed. I knew I had hit a nerve. "That's fine. I've already spoken to a lawyer myself," I said, letting the words hang in the air. "Huh? A lawyer?" he stammered. "Yes," I continued, "and I'm going to ask for compensation." He sounded panicked now, his voice growing louder. "Compensation? For what?" "For cheating. You cheated every time you went back to your parents' house. How long has this been going on?" I sighed. No, he tried to explain. "That was just a high school classmate. He divorced, went back to his parents' house, and it's only lasted about 2 years. He tried to justify himself. My husband seemed to realize he had said too much. "Oh, 2 years? A high school classmate?" I repeated. "Thank you for the useful information." He tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, it's been 2 years, but we're getting married soon. If you don't submit the divorce papers quickly, we'll be in trouble because both sets of parents have agreed," my husband explained. "You're talking a lot, but are you sure you're okay?" I asked, hearing his nervous laugh. "There's no way you're asking for compensation for cheating because if we get divorced, we'll divide our property. The lawyer's already set on that. The money from selling your high-rise condominium is substantial, even after dividing our property, so compensation would only be a small amount," he concluded. His nonsense was almost too much to bear. "Did you rebuild your parents' house with that money?" I asked pointedly. I'm taking out a loan in my name, but if we divide the property, I can settle it all at once," he responded, sounding excited. "Are you serious? My father's condominium was sold, but that money isn't subject to property division," I stated. "Well, what?" Aaron wondered. Why didn't you or your parents know that? I inquired, perplexed. You're so ignorant, already jumping the gun and rebuilding the house? Unbelievable, I continued, smirking and glanced at my watch. It was almost time. By the way, Aaron, are you at home now? I asked. Yeah, why? His confusion was apparent. Well, I'll be there soon, I added, and heard the intercom over the phone and told my husband to answer it. Robert, my husband's surprised voice echoed through the phone. Robert had gone to see my husband with a lawyer. He probably had something he wanted to say as his father and casually mentioned that he would also claim damages. Since I had no intention of meeting my husband, I didn't care if he divorced me. I had few memories with him anyway, but if he tried to take my father's inheritance from me, I wouldn't forgive him. I heard Robert's voice over the phone, firm and resolute. I have more memories with Grandpa, Grandma, and Mom than with you, Robert said, and tears welled up in my eyes at his words. Afterward, I claimed damages for my husband's infidelity, and we divorced. It seems that the woman who had the affair with him was told he was divorced and single, so she sued him for marriage fraud. I heard from Robert's friend that my in-laws had just finished rebuilding their house, but were already putting it up for sale. My husband didn't seem to have quit his job, so he might have moved into company housing or back to his parents' house. However, it was an old building with a bad reputation for human relationships. Well, at least he has a place to live. I hope he works hard. I sold my father's high-rise condominium and bought a well-located one with the money. Robert mentioned that he and his girlfriend would visit me this summer because we could see fireworks from there. I imagined attending my son's wedding in the future and felt grateful for how much he had grown.